Sound awakens something deep within. Welcome to this podcast, a space to slow down, tune in, and return to the song of your soul. Today, I am joined by Swami Adhyatmananda, a monk from Kriya Yoga International and a disciple of Paramahamsa Prajnanananda. Through his knowledge of Sanskrit and Kriya Yoga meditation practice, he is helping interested seekers. He has taught some Sanskrit courses for which the links are available in the description below. We are diving into the magic of Sanskrit, and you will walk away with a powerful yet simple practice. So stay tuned, as this one is full of insight and soul. Thank you, Swamiji, for being here today. So I wanted to ask you today more about Sanskrit and the importance of it. So the first question I wanted to ask you is, what is it about Sanskrit, especially the sound of it, that makes it so powerful and so intriguing, especially in the Indian spiritual traditions and throughout the history?
So Sanskrit, first of all, has to be understood as a language which took this sound and the instrument of sound, that human voice, as the main thing into consideration. So there are many aspects related to the sound which are incorporated in Sanskrit. For one, it is a phonetic language, and it's 100% phonetic language. I think it is the only language in the world which is 100% phonetic language. What does that mean? That the way it is written, the same way it is spoken, 100%, like there is no variation. Similarly, the way it is written, the way it is spoken. It's a 100% correspondence. What it does is, the advantage of that approach is that you could choose any script to write Sanskrit, because it's 100% phonetic. Therefore, in India, since time immemorial, there have been many scripts which were used for writing Sanskrit, and you will find the manuscripts in all sort of languages. Some of the scripts which are even not anymore in vogue, like people don't use those scripts anymore. So we have the manuscripts in Pali, Prakrit, those kind of languages, but it is the same Sanskrit which is written. So it is one aspect which is 100% phonetic. So the one of the things which it was suggested, because of this reason and another reason, that it would be very useful for computer human voice interface, because that's the only language where, if one can truly pronounce it correctly, computer will have the perfect understanding. Like today, we are struggling so much with AI models and other things, that for computer to be able to understand the human sound. If it were something like related to Sanskrit we were doing instead of English, that would have become very easy, without any problem at all, because all the sounds are so well defined. Their whole structure, the way the sound is produced in the human mouth, like where the position of your tongue is, how much your mouth is open, where the position of lips is. So all those things together will produce a very unique sound. So therefore, it is possible to teach Sanskrit to somebody who has not been at all familiar with it, because those sounds are so scientifically produced that you could actually train the person to produce that kind of sound.
Wow, that's very interesting, Swamiji. The way it's spoken, the way it's written.
The way it's spoken. And that is one aspect. Second aspect is, the whole thing is very scientifically structured, as I said, in terms of the instrument which he has, the human mouth or the human voice, that the vowels are defined in terms of, like, vowels are, first of all, vowels are listed separately. So there are 13 vowels which are listed separately, and those are defined in terms of that how the sound is produced. So what kind of effort is required to produce that sound. So there, in Sanskrit grammar, all these things are so well defined that they call it Vahya Prayatna and Antar Prayatna, that an internal effort and external effort to produce the sound. And they call the sparsha. Sparsha means where the tongue is touching within the mouth, that is producing the sound. And then there is another thing, which is whether the sound is requiring an exhalation.
Okay.
to produce that sound. Okay, so the vowels are divided in terms of whether the sound is primarily being produced from the throat or from the tongue taking it to the upper palate, tongue touching the lower palate, tongue touching the teeth, and tongue not touching on the palate at all. It's through the lips. And then within that, whether it's with the exhalation or without exhalation of the air. So all those things, the whole structure of sound is divided in consonants also. There are 5 separate groups have been defined based upon where the tongue is. So all those things actually create a very, very unique sound patterns when somebody speaks Sanskrit.
Wow, that's very interesting, Swamiji, because the sound structure and how it's produced, and also it seems like as you're speaking and learning it, it's a very meditative language. Yes. Because the breath is involved in it.
Breath is involved, and then there is a yogic significance. In yogic philosophy, it is believed that there are 50 types of breath, and in Sanskrit, there are 50 types of sounds. So the breath is actually linked to which kind of breath is producing which particular sound.
So each sound has a different breath then?
Yes.
In Sanskrit?
In Sanskrit, in yogic philosophy.
Wow, that's beautiful, Swamiji. So let's say if a common person wants to learn it, who has no previous background or anything, is it easy, Swamiji?
Yes, it's easy. It does require an effort, but the effort is very scientifically and very structured. So anybody who is willing to put that effort, they can definitely learn it.
Sure, Swamiji. And how about the one you've mentioned, like how is it the internal and external aspect of, is it the pronunciation or is it like the sound, how it?
The based upon that effort, the different sound will come out. So that's the idea. That's the idea.
And how, so the vowels and consonants, Swamiji, so the vowels are the ones from A to Aha. And then the consonants are the ones from Ka to
Ha.
Okay. So, yes. And basically those are the ones which are in Telugu and Hindi too.
So whatever the languages are derived from Sanskrit, they have the similar structure.
They have similar structure.
But those who are not, which languages are not, then those, I have not found any other language as perfectly phonetic other than Sanskrit.
So then, Swamiji, how about these, let's say somebody is learning mantras and they don't have a prior background of Sanskrit, but they're just learning it. How does their pronunciation vary from a person who has a complete understanding of Sanskrit?
So pronunciation, if you just want to pronounce correctly, you just have to learn the pronouncing methodology, that how to pronounce the individual correct letters. You don't have to necessarily know Sanskrit for that. Just for pronouncing, you don't have to know the grammar behind it.
Sure.
You just have to understand that how to pronounce a particular letter and therefore a particular sound.
Sure.
So as long as one understands that, one can learn to chant the mantra. But if you want to understand the meaning of the mantra, or more than the mantra, which is normally a very small snippet of a sentence, if you want to learn, say, for example, how to read the scriptures, how to read Bhagavadgita, Ramayana, and then you need the proper grammatical knowledge of Sanskrit.
Makes sense, Swamiji. So then how about like these, when we chant the mantras, right, Swamiji, like how are we, I mean, my question is, since people who don't have the background, are they putting the tongue and the breath, you think it's happening pretty much around what it's supposed to happen like?
If they learn it properly.
If they learn it. But if they don't,
then it will not come out correctly. And you can easily see if somebody chanting the mantra, you will immediately know that they are not pronouncing it correctly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then how can we correct it?
This is what, like, person has to learn properly how to pronounce this particular sound, because many of these sounds are not in, say, for example, English language. So Sanskrit has a lot of sounds, say, for example, bha, gha, dha, jha, these sounds are not necessarily available in English language.
Like the ones with the stress.
With the stress, and even without, like, is not there. So ta is not there.
Yeah.
So some of these sounds are not there in English language. They're like there are three different types of S sound, sha sound, sha, sha, sa. So those are not there. I mean, not all three are there in English language. So naturally, people who have been only exposed to English language, they don't have that native ability to be able to pronounce those sounds. But they can learn it. It can be learned because it is so structured. Unlike, say, for example, somebody who is not exposed to English, they will find very difficult to figure out what the pronunciation of a word is.
Sure.
Because the same word written in the very similar manner is pronounced very differently.
Like so because silent letters and stuff.
Yeah, so there are many silent letters. So that's why to learn English language becomes quite challenging for somebody who is foreigner to English language. But Sanskrit, once one understands that that's how the sound is pronounced, they can actually pronounce any single word written in Sanskrit. Once they understand these 50 sounds, how do they get pronounced? They can pronounce every single word in the Sanskrit language.
Wow, that's beautiful, Swamiji. And then how about like the sound of all of these things? How does it affect our internal like structure, Swamiji? Like because it's a very meditative language, and these sounds seem so powerful, especially when we are even learning or chanting. How does it change anything?
So there are two aspects of sound. One, I already told you that as per the yogic philosophy, these sounds are representing different types of breaths. So those different types of breath do bring about different kind of dispositions in the human mind and the psyche. But our rishis have found out that there are certain specific combination of sounds which are mantras. They do bring about very specific changes in the human psyche if they are repeated for a certain number of times. That's where there is so much importance of mantra japa in Vedic philosophy. That if you chant a mantra, this particular mantra these many times, so same sound is being repeated, producing those inner vibrations, brings about a change in the human psyche.
So then, Swamiji, there's different kinds of japa, right? There's the auditory, the vocal, you speak it out, and then there's internal, the mental japa. So then when we're doing the mental japa, we are not actually producing any sound. Then how is the change happening?
So the changes actually happens through the concept of prana. So what happens is that wherever the mind is, prana goes there.
Okay.
So people who don't have that much of a power of concentration, for them vachika japa, that means chanting it out loud, is recommended.
Okay.
Those who are able to have that power of concentration, that they don't need to produce the sound externally, but they can just do the mental chanting of the mantra. There, because of their concentration and mentally going through over the same things, the mind is actually absorbed there. Therefore, prana actually is also absorbed there. So the effect of manasik japa is considered to be even higher than vachik japa.
Vachika japa. But then we have to start from vachika and go to mental.
Generally, yes. It depends upon the power of concentration of one person.
Sure, Swamiji. And then how about like, it's almost like you mentioned, like where the concentration is, that's where the mind is. But let's say when we are chanting, we are thinking about something, I mean, let's say food or something, but the mind is just on the food. I can't tell that it's concentration, right, Swamiji? I mean, because it's something external and I'm not in my mind, but it's on one pointedness. How to achieve that balance, Swamiji?
So particularly in mantra japa, that's where it is recommended for those people who don't have a lot of power of concentration to do the vachika japa. So again and again, whenever the mind wanders, you can again bring it back to the sound.
Okay.
So that's why it's easier to do vachika japa. In manasik japa, you would just lose the mantra altogether. If the mind wanders, you would just lose it completely.
Lose it. So then we cannot bring it back as easily.
It will be very difficult, right? Because it is gone. Like it is, the mantra is also in the mind and other distraction is also in the mind. So
Right.
here, because you have an external sound going on, it's easier to bring back the mind to the mantra sound of mantra.
So then sound becomes a vital part of kind of
Sound
bringing the
becomes a very
focus
important part. Yes,
and the mindfulness.
yes.
So then how can we actually channel with the sound how to calm the mind more deeply, Swamiji?
So the mantra chanting is one of them, and just simply chanting Om. So
Oh.
if somebody just experiments with this thing, like say chant Om with slow, long, and deep breath, like long Om,
Mhm.
11 times, one will see the difference automatically in their lives.
Within 11
With
ohms.
11, just with 11 chantings, maybe do it twice a day, once morning, once evening, but just chanting it 11 times, and one can increase it slowly, slowly, say 21 times.
Sure. So is 11 and 21, are they significant numbers, Swamiji?
Generally, they are considered auspicious numbers. I do not know the reason behind it, but many a times I have heard that being considered the auspicious number.
Okay. And then how about like for example, the most of our mantras came from Sanskrit, right, Swamiji? And when the rishis made them or came up with these mantras, how or what was their intention of coming up with these in a specific fashion or in that sequence?
So, mantra is not something that somebody invented.
Mhm.
So, the word for rishi in Sanskrit is mantra drashtara, those who see the mantra, not mantra kartara. They don't
Oh,
create the mantra.
okay.
So it's not that somebody has just thought about, analyzed different sounds and came up with this mantra. That's
Okay.
not how the mantras came about.
Okay.
So they perceived those mantras in very deep states of meditation, and then it was revealed to them that this mantra would be beneficial or useful for this purpose.
That's
Therefore, in Vedas, every mantra has a rishi. That
Mhm.
this rishi means one who sees. The literal meaning of the word rishi is one seer, one who sees. That is the literal meaning of. So rishis, those who came up with these mantras, they always got these mantras revealed to them. Not that they actually came to these mantras through some sort of research and analysis kind of thing.
Yes, Swamiji, that makes sense. So then, let's say some mantras do not talk about any rishis.
Like,
What, like, let's say some of the slokas from Adi Shankaracharya, they do not talk about the rishis. Then those were also perceived by him through meditation.
so if they are mantras, yes, but they are two different things. One is mantra, one is the stotram or the verses. So
Okay.
verses can be created, they are not necessarily the same as mantra.
Okay.
A
Makes.
guru can recommend sometimes a verse as a mantra, that's a different thing.
Mhm.
In that case, you can say it's the power of guru which is behind that mantra. But generally, just any simple creation in Sanskrit is not a mantra.
Okay, Swamiji, that makes sense. Brings a lot of clarity. And then how about like when we are chanting, how do we know that we are chanting properly when we don't have a physical guru present or when we don't have anybody imparting that knowledge to us?
So that has to be learned. I mean, either guru has to teach or you learn from somebody that how to chant how to pronounce those letters correctly. That has to be learned, because
That,
otherwise there is no way to figure out that whether it is correct or not. So that has to be learned properly
from the physical guru,
from the physical guru, or whoever has the knowledge of chanting Sanskrit.
chanting Sanskrit at
Yeah,
least,
yeah.
even if it's not that particular chant.
Even if a person is not very well versed in the Sanskrit literature or mantras or those kind of things. But
Sure.
mantra should be taken from a guru.
Guru mantra should be taken. Like let's say for example, slokams or stutis, they can be learnt by themselves.
Yeah, they can be learned by themselves. That's
Okay.
perfectly fine.
And it's okay if there's minor pronunciation mistakes.
Generally, it's fine. And we always, in Sanskrit, there is a tradition. We always have the Kshama Prarthana Stotram in the end. The
Yeah.
Kshama Prarthana Stotram asking for forgiveness. So it is always possible that we could make mistakes in some way or the other. So we just ask for forgiveness at the end of our chanting or end of our puja to give. So that way, whatever mistakes might have been made, they are sort of corrected. They are considered corrected.
That's beautiful, Swamiji. If not, people, like most of the people they may be feeling like, oh, you know what, I made a mistake, this may happen or that may happen. But with this, we've lot of us, we feel empowered, like, even if we made a mistake, it's
Right.
okay, because the God and the Guru will take care of it.
Right.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, Swamiji. And how about, like, just the Sanskrit language itself? How did it impact you? Or when did you start learning it?
So personally, for me, I learned Sanskrit as a part of my studies. Like when I was, say, sixth grade, like right from the sixth grade onward, there was a little bit of Sanskrit at the end of the Hindi book and part of the curriculum. Um, so, and I liked it, but the way it was taught in India at that time, at least in my school, it was not very explanatory. So it was more like learning by rote. You just memorize these forms, and then, but somehow I liked Sanskrit. I always had the desire to learn more of Sanskrit. But during that time, one focus was somehow to pass the examination. Two, there was no proper teaching that what is the value of Sanskrit, how should it be properly learned, like those kind of things. So I didn't quite learn properly, but I always had the desire to learn more when the time permits. So when I was in job and I had more time, I started going through some of the material on the internet as well as on the buying some books. And then I realized, like, some of these books and some of this material on the internet, the way they explain that this is the beauty of Sanskrit and this is
Mhm.
how Sanskrit can be learned. That's how I actually started learning Sanskrit.
Wow. And since then, have you noticed any kind of impact that has created in you?
I mean, for me, one of the desire for me for learning Sanskrit was to be able to understand the scriptures in original. So I always had the desire to be able to read Gita or Bhagavad Ramayanam or Mahabharata, like those kind of scriptures, without necessarily using the translations. And even if I'm using the translation, I should be able to at least figure out how the translation is coming about from this verse. So that was always my desire. So in that sense, there is some progress. I mean, Sanskrit is like an ocean. You can learn for a very, very long time, but there has been some progress, I would say, in terms of my ability to be able to understand the scriptures. And also it helps you to, if you want to memorize some verses, it helps you because you will not be making the silly grammatical mistakes because you know the Sanskrit grammar. Many people, if they just try to learn Sanskrit without learning the grammar of the meaning, there is always a possibility that you would replace this part of the shloka in this shloka and that kind of thing. So those mistakes are minimized.
That makes sense, Swamiji. And it's amazing how you learned it mostly on your own, and
Yes.
you are reading all the scriptures
And then
and
I also conducted a couple of courses that also helped me to solidify my understanding.
yeah, I've been part of one of your courses, and that was beautiful how you start from the basics and you have different levels.
Yes.
Um, so so tell us, Swamiji, like, how, if let's say someone wants to really learn Sanskrit, how, if they're really interested, approximately how much time would it take for them to learn? I know it
As
depends
I
on.
said, like Sanskrit is a kind of ocean and where you can actually spend many, many years to learn Sanskrit. But if somebody is from the very basic and they just want to be, say, like, let's say my level of Sanskrit I want to acquire is that I be able to read Gita
Mm-hmm,
or Ramayana,
mm-hmm.
Valmiki Ramayana. If that is how I'm aiming myself for, then I would say 2 to 3 years of study, dedicated study of
Wow,
Sanskrit.
that's good, Swamiji. I mean, it's good to know kind of a timeline so
Yeah,
we can.
but it requires like a really dedication and commitment to pursue that, and preferably a good teacher with a course kind of thing, whom you can ask the questions, and they don't have to be in the modern age. They don't have to be physically present because online a lot of things can be done. But with the self study, it won't be possible in that much time because there will always be a question, and then if you are just doing the self study, then there is a possibility you may get stuck, not getting the answers to your question. So it
So
will
it's
take longer. It
better
will
to
take.
have a guru.
Yeah. So it will be good to have a teacher whom you can contact at least for your doubts.
Sure, Swamiji. And how is the sound of Sanskrit. Like it's a very pleasing language. Like even when we are pronouncing certain letters and these words together, it sounds very pleasing.
Mhm.
And it doesn't even seem like, let's say, even if we are trying to be angry at someone, it won't come out in a negative fashion. How was it even created, Swamiji? Like who created it and how did it kind of come about?
So we don't believe that Sanskrit was created. We believe it was sort of given to humankind. In India. It is called Devavani. That
Oh,
means the language of gods.
okay.
That's how the tradition believes.
Mm.
And the Sanskrit has undergone some changes in terms of its format. Very little though. Like in the Vedic time, 5,000 years old or 5,000 or more years old,
Mm-hmm.
that language had a little bit different usages of different words, but it is still possible to read that language even today. So Sanskrit, because its grammar was so perfect,
Mm-hmm.
it hasn't undergone many changes for many thousands of years. So
Wow.
there is a little variation. Only we call it two styles: Vedic Sanskrit and classic Sanskrit.
Okay.
So all the Vedas, they are written in sort of Vedic Sanskrit.
Okay.
Some of the words, they can be used a little differently in Vedic Sanskrit.
Okay.
In classic Sanskrit, what we have, so-called modern Sanskrit, where Panini codified the grammar, and that grammar has become sort of the fundamental building block on which all the Sanskrit literature is based.
Okay.
So therefore, it is possible for me to read Bhagavad Gita, which is 5,000 years old book, even by studying Sanskrit today. Which,
Even
say, for example, will not be possible for somebody who reads the modern Greek to be able to understand ancient Greek in the same manner. As I said, like we don't believe that Sanskrit was created by somebody. That's
Mhm.
the tradition believes that it's Devavani. That means it came from God Himself. But there was a lot of effort to codify the grammar,
modified.
to understand that how to put all the rules of grammar in a manner which can be learned by everybody. So the
Mm.
Sanskrit grammar is the most structured grammar of any language anywhere in the world.
Okay.
So Panini, so there were many efforts of
Mhm.
codifying this Sanskrit grammar, and finally Panini was able to master it to an extent that it has remained unchanged for thousands of years. So
Wow.
after that, people didn't think that any more improvement on that was possible.
Okay. So then we can still understand Vedic Sanskrit by just learning classic Sanskrit.
But and a little bit more, like just specific usages of the words in Vedic Sanskrit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then Panini was the first one to actually work on the grammar?
No, he was actually one of the, like, I would say that among the known ones, his grammar became the final grammar.
Okay.
So you can say he was the last of those stalwarts. I mean, there were others people after him, but no, people only tried to do a little bit minor changes or restructuring on his grammar. But his is considered that one which has become sort of the final gold standard. So before him, there were a lot of grammarians.
Lot of people. Okay. So when I mean, this may sound silly, but my question is when it came as a Devavani, Swamiji, who was the first person or a group of people who were the first ones to actually receive or perceive it?
We consider is like Vedic rishis. We don't have the name of a particular rishi,
Okay.
but we consider it as like Vedic rishis who got these sounds and the way to pronounce and understanding of those sounds.
So kind of like how you explained initially how mantras kind of
In a way, but sound like as a language sort of just arose must have been much more of an effort than just a simple mantra.
Okay.
They're
Yeah.
Considering the whole language, and it
Yeah.
may have happened in stages possibly. We don't quite have a lot of literature on how did it come about.
Like there wasn't much history on its
Yeah,
initial
we
stages.
don't have much history on that.
Then if we look at like the mantras again, Swamiji, they were perceived by the rishis and they were given to mankind. Um, so when that was happening, were the rishis actually asking for something to uplift the humanity in that specific sense? Like, for example, plague happened, so many things happened. So, were they actually intentionally asking for something that would help them, or did it just happen?
I think it could be both ways. We don't have the details on that.
Okay.
That what was their intention for the
Mhm.
which they were seeking these things. But my guess is that it could have happened both ways. They might have had a specific intention for a prayer, and they might, on other cases, they might be just sitting in deep meditation and something got revealed to them.
Okay. So, when that happened, how did they go about letting people know, like, okay, use this to uplift yourself? And how do they create that faith in them or trust
I
in them?
think it comes so faith is like normally these people were known people, so
Right.
people already had some sort of faith, and people had this faith in the people that uh, uh, in terms of, okay, if they are saying something because they are such exalted beings,
Mhm.
they would be able to they would not be telling lies or making the imaginations. And the further proof actually comes when you see the effect of that mantra.
Mhm.
So if suppose Guru tells you that you chant this mantra 5,000 times and this will happen, and if this thing happens, then
Mhm.
you know
Right.
that that is a true thing.
Mhm.
So that is the final way to have the proof actually for this. And there are many mantras. So like for example, there are many fire ceremonies with very specific mantras
Mhm.
which cause the rain.
Mhm.
And even today, there are people who actually perform those fire ceremonies and are able to get the rains.
Yes. Yeah.
So that is a clear proof that yes, those mantras work the way they were intended.
And also, Swamiji, like when we are chanting or whoever is chanting, don't we need to be in that specific mindful presence to actually have that effect happen?
Generally, yes. So the effect will vary depending upon how
Concentration.
accurately is it chanted and what kind of a state of mind is it chanting. So all those things matter.
So, for example, like somebody is trying to reproduce something that somebody has talked about, like let's say Rishi came and said, okay, you do this and it will rain and you'll have a bounty of harvest. And this person may not be completely mindful, but he did it. He got part of it. But how to actually be completely present when we chant or sing or have that deeper concentration when doing the Nada Yoga?
So that's always a problem of human mind. Human mind, by very fundamental nature, is not steady.
Mhm.
We all have these problems. And in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna raises the same question to Lord Krishna. That mind is so flickery.
Mhm.
How do you expect me to be able to concentrate the mind? So Lord Krishna says that yes, it is true that mind is not steady,
Mhm.
but it can be made steady by abhyasa and vairagya. He gave twofold path. Abhyasa is the practice, vairagya is the detachment. And those are the sort of, you can say, the building blocks of yoga, the meditation practice. And Sage Patanjali also in his Yoga Sutra has given the same two building blocks, abhyasa and vairagya, the practice and detachment. Practice means I focus on something which I intend to do, and vairagya, the detachment in very simple terms, is to withdraw myself from the things which are distracting from that path.
Okay. So when we're doing whatever we're doing, we need to be present.
We need to do it as much as possible, put my mind, and also withdraw my mind from other pursuits, even in other times.
So kind of having one task at hand.
One task at a hand, but also like that focus of life that yes, I want to achieve this, I want to do this. So that concentration of mind, and all the meditation practices in somehow or the other try to inculcate this concentration abilities of the mind. And
Mhm.
Kriya Yoga is one very beautiful practice in the same manner, that employing the both elements of abhyasa and vairagya, it actually helps one to get into that meditative state and bring about the concentration of mind.
Concentration. But it takes definitely abhyasa, practice
Yeah,
takes time.
it takes practice. It takes time, of course.
Yeah. So then would you be able to tell us like a small technique, Swamiji, that may help us to focus better?
So watching the breath is we have this as sort of, you can say, very fundamental thing in Kriya Yoga as a
Mhm.
part of Kriya Yoga practice, and that can be practiced by anybody anytime, and that is very helpful. That
Watching
is
the.
very helpful to attain the peace of mind as well as the one-pointed ability of the mind. So just being aware of the breath, you can just perceive the breath as it is flowing through the nostrils,
Mhm.
inhaling and exhaling, like there is air which is going in. So there is a little sensation of friction in the nostrils.
Mhm.
One can focus on that friction and the sensation of friction, both inward and outward, and
Okay.
just be aware of that. Just naturally breathing, just sit down calmly and just aware of that breath pattern. So that itself helps it.
So what is so is calmness the first thing that happens by watching the breath, Swamiji?
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
So calmness is one of the very first effects you will notice.
And what would be something after that?
After that, as I said, there is a just mind's ability to be able to concentrate better in
Mhm.
the tasks which you want to do.
Sure, Swamiji. And can we do that? Like, let's say I'm not able to watch the breath more than few seconds at a time. Is there something more, like, can sound be used to concentrate more? Or can something external? Like, for me, sound is the main thing. So that's why I'm asking if sound can be used to do that.
Sound can be used, and it has been being used for very, very long time. Like music is one of those means whereby people find the concentration.
Mhm.
So it definitely has a usage. However, in yoga practices, we focus on the inner sound. So
Mhm.
external sound can be a preparatory stage,
Okay.
but truly speaking, that the sound which is perceived without any external means,
Okay.
that is what is truly gives you the concentration.
So then, as you were mentioning before, like how we have the Vachika Japa and the Manasika Japa, the same way with sound, like we have the external sound that can we use that to kind of slowly internalize, go inside and listen to the internal sound at one point when that happens.
You can say that actually, that's a good analogy.
So then, would you suggest or recommend any kind of such sounds to us that will help us get there?
So, again, even in those sounds, the ones which can be produced by the human voice, like mantra, for example, are more recommended than, say, one which is produced by an instrument or a tape recorder.
Okay.
So it depends upon the person's ability to concentrate. If one can only concentrate, and even within the external sounds, right? We all know the differences between classical music, popular music, pop, and all those music. So again, classical music is more recommended.
Mhm.
The sounds of those instruments, like just the instrumental sound
Okay.
being produced in a particular ragas, so that can help one to concentrate the mind. So all those can be used as aids depending upon the person's interest and his own ability to concentrate the mind.
So then, Swamiji, going back to the Vachika Japa and how we can use that to internalize, get into mental japa or meditative state. Can you give an example of how that can happen, Swamiji?
You can actually experiment yourself, like when you chant Om and you are focusing on that sound while chanting at the same time,
Mhm.
you will find that immediately your mind becomes very concentrated and peaceful and calm. Even as I said, like it tried doing 11 times.
Uh-huh.
So that's something that can be experimented and can be felt.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once we are like even with Om, like once we mastered the Vachika, would it become internal? Like
It,
would it
it,
become
it requires
Manasika?
practice, but it can become internal. It requires certain practice.
Okay.
It requires certain practice.
So then when it becomes internal, would you call that is that the internal sound that you're hearing?
Not that you are still trying to produce that sound mentally. But
Okay.
when you are hearing the sound, there is no effort in producing any kind of sound. That sound is the sound which is existing in the cosmos, in your all the planes of existence.
Mhm.
And you are just with the help of concentration are able to perceive that sound. So there is no effort involved even mentally chanting. So that's quite different.
So that's different. Chanting, we are using our voice, but listening to the sound, it when it happens internally, that's when we are actually listening to the nada.
Correct.
The sound. Correct. And that happens at one point effortlessly.
Yeah, that requires some concentration of the mind, and sometimes some technique like Kriya Yoga technique, those kind of techniques can help one to able to cultivate that ability to hear the sound.
Sure, Swamiji. And for japa, do you have any tips for us? Like
no, for japa, as I said, the main thing is like you take it from, so mantra, if you are doing a mantra japa, then it's better. So there are two things. Like one is just chanting God's name, that can be done by its own. You don't necessarily need to take it from someone. But if you want to use a mantra and you want to have some sort of a purpose that for which you want to achieve, then it's better to go to a guru, take the mantra, and then whichever way guru tells you to do the japa, you do the japa in that manner.
Okay. Yeah. And then like they also talk about when you do some of the japas, you have to do yagnas and all of
that. So all those things are there. Those are the traditional things. So those are typically part of anushthana. So when one does the anushthana to achieve something, you do those kind of things. But when one is doing it for the spiritual progress, your mantra just for many of those things are not applicable. So guru may just say that you do this japa every single day, 10,000 times a day, let's say. Okay. So in that case, many a times these formalities are not required because there is no end date to it. It's not like an anusthana which has a start date and end date. So when you have that kind of anusthana, the sort of, you can say, the experiment with the mantra that you want to achieve something, then those things matter. Yeah. But when it is for the spiritual growth purpose, purification of the heart is the primary focus for doing the mantra as a spiritual practice, then there is generally no end date. Yeah. You just take practice. Yeah, it's a constant practice. So you try with the, as I said, with japa, you ask guru. Sometimes guru may say, okay, you start with say 108 japa per day, and then you slowly increase. So depending upon how guru recommends you, you basically try to follow that. Sure, Swami. Yeah. Particularly in case of mantra japa, it's always recommended to take the mantra from a guru. From a guru. Sure, Swamiji. And we appreciate your time, Swamiji. Thank you so much for being. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. Take a deep breath, carry the peace with you, and I will see you next time.